Hi, this is Dr. Bill Dyment with Dyment Associates. I want to talk to you today a little bit about what is a critical incident and also how do you respond to one. We respond in what is known as a critical incident stress debriefing, a CISD is what we say in the business. And a critical incident is anything that hits your company and your employees that's out of the ordinary, that's traumatic or very emotional, that you think will derail the company temporarily beyond what they normally experience. And so in those situations, you want to consider having somebody, a team of people come in and provide some extra help. And that way the company is perceived as caring versus emotionally tone deaf. There are fewer stress claims, loss of work due to illness, and people even leaving. In some situations, it's almost impossible to keep people from leaving when there's a loss of life. We're doing what we can do to mitigate against that and to get people back to normal and functioning better. And we're providing some TLC as we go along. Now, what are some of the critical incidents that you may have heard of? Of course, you think about the dramatic things, and we've worked with a number of shootings and suicides on-site and off-site, accidental deaths and injuries, terrorist events, 9/11, natural disasters like earthquakes. But it could be something like a labor dispute. It could be an acquisition of a company. Maybe it's a good thing, but temporarily people are having to do double duty. They're exhausted, they're stressed out. Maybe there's a hint or a reality that a layoff is coming and you want to provide some help during that moment. Now, what happens when you want to intervene? Well, there's about a 6-stage process that makes a lot of sense. And the first step is usually we get a call from a leader, an HR person, a CEO, a top leader in an organization saying, this just happened. Did you see the news? Have you read about it? How do you help us? And step 2, that quickly turns into a brief little huddle with some top people saying, this is the proposed intervention. Are you on board? This is what works. This is what we've done. And typically, step 3 is what we talk about. We have what I've found to be a mandatory meeting. I've worked in East Africa, and what I've found is that when you do not insist on people getting together with a loss of life situation and saying, how are you doing? If they say, I'm going home, I'm going on break, I'm going on vacation, I'm out of here, those folks tend to not come back. Those folks tend to have a lot more emotional issues. So we found that it just makes sense to have a mandatory meeting, get everybody together. And what do you talk about during that first intervention meeting? You talk about what happened. You talked about how are you doing. You make sure the rumor mill has been squashed. You talk about how we're going to message things. We talk about who's not here, who's there, who saw it. And we also say, who are you most concerned about? How do we get them to make sure that they have help? How do we check in with them? And we talk about here's some things that are normal. And normal feelings in an abnormal situation are very extreme. In other words, it's not uncommon to have nightmares and trouble sleeping and all sorts of things within the first few days. That's pretty normal. But we also want to let people know if you see some of these things, other things, these are things where you need some additional help other than just checking in with somebody for a day or so. So we want to help people get on the same page. We found that when we do that with managers and teachers and leaders, they are in turn the next day or the next hour able to help their people more. When we don't have that, guess what? They are reeling as well as they try to help the people that are their subordinates. Then what we try to do is right after that, and this is almost always the case in every CISD, we provide, and you know this, we provide opportunities to meet with people like ourselves, licensed folks who do this work in individual rooms, in private, just to check in with them to see how they're doing. Most of the people choose to go themselves and come to see us. Other people may need a little push. I've seen people that are complete shock, doctors that are in ER that are not doing well at all, and people need to say, hey, you need to see Dr. Bill. You need to check in. I'm concerned about you. Maybe it's a couple days later. Maybe we get a call and say, hey, come back in and talk to this Dr. Smith. They're not doing as well. That is the opportunity for one-on-one. Now, sometimes we just meet with people a couple days, maybe just at one time. We make referrals for them to get continued care. It depends on the severity of the situation. And then finally, the 6th stage, ideally, is for us to come back in a couple weeks and see how you're doing. Maybe a doctor lost their life. And we say, hey, we all knew Dr. Jones. How are you doing? I know you've had a really hard, tough 2 weeks. What kind of rituals have you had? Have you had a service? Are you having a remembrance? Who's still struggling? Here's some coffee. Here's some donuts. Here's some bagels. Let's talk together. There's a lighter mood. And we tie it up in a bow. What we find is when we do that with folks, it makes a huge, huge difference. And that is what we call a critical incident stress debriefing. Well, this is Dr. Bill Dyment with Dyment Associates, and now you know.